Welcome to CXO, a magical podcast to help you serve better and concoct experiences that are superlative in nature. I'm your host, Supriya Sharma, bringing to you in each episode didactic nuggets so you can get inspired to sprinkle stardust in your company, your home, and the community on the whole.
On our show, CXO today is Scott McKain. Scott is a globally recognized authority on how organizations and professionals create distinction to attract and retain customers and stand out in a hyper-competitive marketplace. Scott's recent book, Iconic, was named on Forbes.com as a top 10 best business book for 2018. Having presented in all 50 states in the United States and 23 countries in addition, he was honored with the membership in the Professional Speakers Hall of Fame. Now, something really interesting about Scott, Arnold Schwarzenegger booked him for a presentation at the White House with the president in the audience. Brilliant. And Scott has also played the villain in a movie named by esteemed critic Roger Ebert as one of the 50 greatest movies in the history of cinema, directed by the legendary Werner Herzog. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to watch this movie. But welcome to CXO, Scott. Here you are today with us.
Oh, it's so great to be with you. And I'm sorry, you probably won't recognize me because the movie is a few years old. So the voice sounds the same, but the appearance is a whole lot different. But I appreciate it. It's so great to be with you. And I know that we think very similarly in terms of the importance of the customer experience. So it's great to share some time with you today.
Yeah, and your passion for distinction is contagious, Scott. When it comes to business, the companies are trying day in and day out to differentiate themselves from competitors, and they're employing different ways into their strategies. Still, they're suffering from this phenomenon of uniformity across organizations. Now, why do you think is that so?
I think because a lot of business leaders look for, first of all, about, well, what's our competition doing? And they think if they equal or surpass incrementally what their competitor is doing, then they're going to be okay. They want to be safe. They don't want to take risks. But what they don't realize is their competitor is doing the same thing. So if I'm watching you and imitating you, and you're watching me and imitating me, it means that we're both going to be pretty much the same, and the customer is going to have a very difficult time deciding where to take their business. In the history of business in the world, there has never been a customer to say, I love doing business with them. They're exactly like everybody else. Right? I mean, when I proposed to my wife, I did not get down on one knee and say, honey, will you marry me? You're exactly like every other woman I've ever dated. That would not be a good proposal.
She would never agree that way.
Right. We are attracted because of our uniqueness. We're attracted because of differences. And so if you serve the customer exactly like I serve the customer, then there's no meaningful way for a customer to really make a choice of which they prefer. And so therefore they just start looking at price. And no matter where we are in the world, that is the single worst spot for any business to be in, where you're competing only on the basis of price.
What's the answer then? How do I differentiate myself as a service provider just so I'm not exactly the same or similar to the other service provider?
Right. I think a couple ways. That's a great question. I think there's a couple ways, but I really believe it begins with the senior management, with the CEO and the top leaders of the organization. Because if they're not focused on the customer experience, it's really difficult, if not impossible, to get the front line as focused on the experience as they should be. And so it's thinking about how can we innovate to serve our customer. A lot of folks talk about differentiation, but I've always called it distinction. And the reason is because differentiation means I'm different. Hey, if I slap every customer in the face, I'm different. But it doesn't mean everybody's going to come back and do business with me. It's finding ways to be different that's meaningful for customers. An example that I use is a company based here in the States, but it's a family. The Taylor family was starting a rental car business. They've got to compete against Hertz. They've got to compete against Avis, the major players in that industry. And they also realized that the cars they were renting, the product, was identical to what the competition had. The Ford that I get from Hertz is identical to the Ford that I get from Avis. How do I differentiate myself? So they made a list of every point of contact they'd have with a customer. There's 13 of them they came up with. And they said, let's pick one of these and do it uniquely. And the Taylor family still owns that rental car business they named Enterprise Rental Car, which is now the largest rental car agency in the world. And it's not because the product is different. It's because they decided they'll bring the car to you and pick you up. You don't have to come to them to get the car. They'll bring the car to you. So fast forward a few years, and Jeff Bezos is sitting in a office that's his desk is a door on concrete blocks in his garage, and he thinks, now how could we be the enterprise rental car of books? What if we got the book to you rather than making you go to the bookstore to buy the book? And that was the beginning of Amazon. And then they realized, wait a minute, this doesn't just work for books, this works for everything. And so now he's the richest person in the world. I was given a speech before the pandemic hit. I was given a speech to thousands of dentists. And I met a dentist who thought, now, how can I do that in dentistry? And he built a trailer that's a dental office. And so you make an appointment with the dentist, and the trailer pulls up in front of your house, and you walk out of your house and get in the trailer, and there's the dentist. You don't have to go to the dental office. They bring it. Well, and guess what happens? A neighbor tells another neighbor about it, so they make an appointment. So they pull into like a neighborhood, and people just go to the dentist office in their neighborhood rather than trying to find another dentist. So it's thinking about how do we uniquely serve our customers? Because for example, I mean, bringing the car to me saves me time. Well, that's a great question. How do we save our customers time? How do we be more engaging with our customers? One of the things I recommend, for example, with financial advisors and lawyers and accountants, is this. One of the first things they should say is, how would you like us to contact you? Do you prefer a phone call, a text, email, online, Zoom? How would you like to have conversations with us going forward? And let the customer define how they prefer communications. So it's those very, very small things that can make a huge difference when it comes to the feelings that customers have towards your organization.
I absolutely love the way how you differentiated between differentiation and distinction. That subtle difference of making a meaningful difference for customers makes a lot of sense and goes a long way. Very interesting. But then I am expecting more, because what I see in your background is iconic. So from being distinctive to being iconic, what's the way there?
Well, it's a great question, because something I hadn't even thought about it until one of my clients said something about it. They went through this, there are 4 cornerstones of distinction, and they went through that process, and they were getting amazing results. And they said, okay, now what do we do to achieve the highest level of distinction? And I thought, oh man, I better research that. I wasn't prepared. I'd written a book and a course on how to create distinction, but not how to take it to the highest level, not how to keep it once you got it, right? Once you've created distinction, how do you sustain it? Or if something's happened in the marketplace and you've lost it, how do you get it back? So that was the work on iconic. And I found that there were 5 factors. Now, distinction means that you're the go-to within your industry. So let's say I have a restaurant. I live in Las Vegas. Let's say I have a neighborhood restaurant in Las Vegas. Distinction would be that I am the go-to place in my neighborhood. I'm the place that everybody wants to go eat. They think of me first. I stand out from all of my local competition. To me, being iconic it's not just in terms of restaurants. It's in terms of every business would like to be a business like mine. Every business would aspire to, right? I mean, in other words, auto body shops repairing cars are saying, man, we ought to run our business like that restaurant. So that's the level when it transcends your respective industry. And I found that there were basically 5 factors. And the first one, it might be the most important. It's play your game. And it gets back to what you and I were talking at the very beginning, in that most watch their competition and model their behavior based on their competition.
Right.
And what I found was the really iconic organizations, whether it's in a local community anywhere in the world or it's a global industry, really play their own game. It's an overused example, but I don't think Tim Cook at Apple tosses and turns in bed at night worrying about what Microsoft is going to do next. Right? I mean, Apple is going to do what Apple is going to do. They play their own game. I think when you look at the leading players in any industry, the ones that are truly iconic, they are going to chart their own path. Now, it doesn't mean they're not aware of the competition. They're aware. They just don't let the competition define the game. They have their game plan. They have what they're going to do, and they do it. And there's something about that attracts customers. You know, it's why we wonder when the next iPhone is coming out and when we want. Well, I cite some case studies in the book Iconic that are one is a small university in North Carolina here in the States. One is a restaurant in the Midwest that has higher revenue than the fanciest restaurant in New York City. Mm-hmm. How do they do that? And it goes into that. But basically what they have done is to say, this is who we are. You know, and that's one of the real problems, I think, in attracting customers and really standing up for the customer experience is we're very willing to say who we are, mm-hmm. but it's a lot harder to say who we are not. In other words, we have to define what customers we want to create an ultimate customer experience for. By the way, here in the United States, we own I own the trademark on the term ultimate customer experience because I've been talking about it for so long, and we created a process there. And that, what is that ultimate customer experience? Well, I need to define who my customers are. I need to be very precise about who I'm going after. I can't be all things to all people and deliver this ultimate customer experience. And we see that in iconic organizations. They're very precise about who the customers are that they want to serve, and then they go above and beyond to create an ultimate experience for them.
And then when you talk about customers judging us on two things, you make a mention of promise and performance. So could you please explain that?
Sure. That's one of the 5 factors of iconic performance. When we really get down to it, and I was looking for honestly, I was looking for something more complicated. You know, what's this big formula? And I realized customers judge us on only 2 things. What did we promise them that we would do? And how did we deliver? What was our performance? And so that sounds very simple, but the more you drill into it, we have to be very careful about what we're promising our customers. Because whatever we promise them, they have a right to expect that we will deliver. You can also really get into it as well, and this is drilling a whole lot deeper, but what do they perceive the promise is going to be? Mm-hmm. Because that's also based in what our track record has been, what our history as an organization has been, what other customers say about us online. There's a whole lot in terms of the perception. So we have to be very careful of what we promise. And then, do we deliver what we promise? And so you get 4 kinds of groups there. You get low promise, low performance. In other words, they don't promise you much and they don't deliver very much. These are kind of the laggards. They're hanging on. It's here in the United States, Sears is an example. There are companies all over the world that are just, they don't promise much. They don't deliver much. They're just there. They're just hanging on, right? Then you get high promise and low performance. Those are the ones that'll say anything to get your business, but then they don't deliver after they do. And really, I mean, there's not a nice way of saying it, but there really shouldn't be because they don't deliver. They're the frauds. They will say anything to get your business, and then they don't deliver on their promise because they've got your money. And that's a bad business. Mm-hmm. Here's the strange one. Low promise, high performance. Those that promise little and then over deliver. Mm-hmm. And I had always believed that you under promise and over deliver, but there's some research from several universities now, particularly the University of San Diego, that says if we do that on an ongoing basis, our customers begin to view us as manipulative.
Mm.
In other words, we're lowering the promise and over-delivering, not to help the customer, but to make ourselves look like a hero.
Mm.
And customers kind of go, you know what? Why didn't you just tell me what you were going to do? Right? But then you get to high promise and high performance. They advance the promise as they accelerate the performance, and that's where we get the disruptors. That's where we get the iconic folks that are really changing the game. They promise a lot because they can also deliver a lot. So when we think about, and just trying to use a global example, and as I said, I know it's overused, but you know, when the promise of your iPhone is pretty significant on how well it's going to work, and it does, right? And so we feel better not only about buying the next iPhone, but we feel really good about every other product that Apple makes because our experience has been they deliver on their promises. And so to be iconic, you have to be somebody that promises your customers a lot, but can also deliver what you promise. We found, we did research of over 1,000 people all over the nation, and we found the number one thing they want in business, the number one thing that customers want: do what you said you would do when you said you would do it. That's the first step in creating an enthused customer and the customer experience that they want to receive.
Sounds simple, but isn't for the companies, I guess.
But it's not. Yeah, you're so right. It's breathtakingly difficult, and that becomes our challenge, right? Is that you know, how do we do that consistently, and how do we involve everything? Because like every part of that, every part of our organization is involved with that. Even people who never meet a customer face to face. The people in our call centers, the people doing invoices, the people actually manufacturing the product. Everybody is involved in that, which gets back to what we were talking about earlier. It's why the CEO and other senior leadership have to be committed to this. They can't just delegate it. They have to stay engaged and involved to make this work.
The research from the University of San Diego that you just mentioned specifically caught my attention, because conventionally we talk of customer experience or customer service in a fashion that we say, okay, if you're just meeting the customer's expectations, you're delivering a good customer service or customer experience on the whole basket. But if you're exceeding the customer's expectation, it is when excellent customer experiences happen. But if, as an organization, we are committing something and we are delivering just that, don't you think that it's not something fascinating, or it's not that wow factor for the customer? The customer was anyways expecting you to deliver X, and you delivered X instead of X plus Y. Now, what's new in that? There's no wow factor. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I think it depends on where the wow factor comes from. Let me give you an example. You take your car in to get repaired, and they say, we'll have your car done by 5 p.m. And you get off work at 4, and you think, okay, I can't pick the kids up from school, so I've got to have somebody else pick the kids up from school so I can pick up the car at 5, and you make other arrangements. But then you get a call at 1 o'clock because you're such a great customer, your car is ready. Oh, okay, so now I didn't need to make those arrangements. But hey, that's great, they got my car done. The first time you don't think anything about it. Wow, there is a wow factor there. They got my car done. 6 months later, you take your car in for service again, and they do it again. And now you're thinking, why didn't they just tell me it'd be ready at 2 o'clock? Why didn't they tell me it was ready? Why did I get someone else to pick up my kids from school and make arrangements to leave work early? And when they did what they did to try to make themselves look good, not to provide a service for the customer. Now, on the other hand, let's say I promise I'm going to fix your car and it's going to be ready at 5 o'clock. And at 5 o'clock, you pick it up. And not only have we repaired your car, it's been washed, it's been detailed. There's even a rose laying there on the front seat. Wow, that's a wow experience. The difference is the wow came for something that you didn't promise. You didn't underpromise, because what Did you go to the car dealership for a rose? No, you went to get your car fixed, right? So they did what they said they would do when they said they would do it. They delivered there. By adding on this other that's not involved in the expectation, now you can create a wow factor, or you can create a branding factor. No matter where you are in the world, when you check in a DoubleTree hotel, they give you a warm chocolate chip cookie. That's a wow factor. You know, I mean, I go to DoubleTree, I'm pulling in the parking lot, my mouth's watering because I can't wait to get that hot cookie, you know. But if the bed is uncomfortable, or the shower doesn't work, the cookie really doesn't matter, because I'm there to get a good night's sleep, not just for the cookie. So the wow, first we have to do what we said we would do when we said we would do it. The wow factor is created above and beyond what we promise. We don't promise it, but we deliver it as a way to inspire and excite our customer.
Makes sense. In addition, the cookies are always exciting, because likewise, I go to the Golden Tulips every time for the fortune cookies. They have those fortune cookies, and they come with a message, a nice thought with them. So a small thing, but yeah.
And see, you didn't go there for the cookie, but the cookie is part of the wow factor, right? And so, but I mean, it's like an airline that talks about, we serve Starbucks coffee on our airline. Yeah, but if my flight's 4 hours late, I don't care about the coffee. You know, I need to get to London, or I need to get to Rome, or wherever I'm going, right? I don't care about the coffee. We've got to take care of what we have promised first and deliver that consistently. And I see so many companies. One of the 5 factors of iconic performance, and this is one that surprised me in the research, is to go negative. I don't mean to be negative. I mean, be willing to drill deeply into problems. I see too many organizations that when there's a problem with the customer experience, they do everything they can to make that customer go away happy. But then they don't drill deeply enough to figure out what was wrong with our process, either in how we trained our employees or what we expect of our team. We don't drill deeply enough into that so we can fix that process so that we stop creating dissatisfied customers.
Scott, you know what? You're truly iconic here. Let me tell you. Let me tell you why. Let me tell you why.
It's okay.
Because you made a mention just now about going negative, when most of the business books talk about going positive, and that's what exactly was in my mind. And that's what I was about to ask you, actually. What does that mean, going negative instead of going positive? How did you get to know what was in my mind?
Oh, well, I appreciate that. Well, the thing of it is, and we see this in a lot of organizations, if a team member brings you a problem, they think, well, that's a negative employee. No, it may not be. We need to know our problems, because unless we fix the process, we're going to continue to create disappointed customers. And to me, there's nothing more important in business than thrilling and engaging your customers. And again, that has to come from the top level to say, hey, tell us what's wrong. There was a study done on SWOT analysis. A SWOT analysis is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So let's describe what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are, what opportunities there are for our company, and what threats are out there in the marketplace. A study at Texas A&M University found that those studies now, the SWOT analysis, are practically becoming irrelevant because employees are afraid to bring up weaknesses and threats about the organization for fear that they will be branded as a negative employee. Yeah. Look, if we can't talk about our weaknesses, how do we fix them? If we can't analyze the threats to our company in the marketplace, how do we prevail? So we have to be able to understand that going negative is not the same as being negative. Let's identify these and then take a positive approach and say, we're going to fix this. We're going to solve this, because this is how we become iconic.
Absolutely. And the last thing we touch upon before we conclude this really interesting conversation is, you say respect is reciprocal. Now, could you throw some light on that in terms of the customer relationships?
we see situations internally and externally. Okay, so I see it a lot of times internally in organizations where senior management wants respect from the team before they're willing to show respect to the team. And I say that respect is reciprocal. In other words, if I'm not willing to show it first, I shouldn't expect it in return. So as a leader, as a manager, my first job is to display, not just say, but through my actions, display that I respect the team that I'm working with. Because we want that team to display respect for their customers. How do you display respect? It's being sincere in wanting to help. And that doesn't matter whether it is a B2B business, dealing in multi-million-dollar transactions, or whether it's a small retail store selling groceries. That when we display that respect to our customers, we tend to get that respect in return. We have seen incidences during this pandemic of customers that, throw things, it's all over YouTube videos of customers behaving badly. But yet sometimes I wonder, and the customer should never behave that way. I'm not excusing their behavior. But sometimes I wonder, how did the employee act towards them before that behavior was exhibited? Because we've seen a lot of situations where employees are treating customers rudely, and then customers respond with rudeness. Well, we get what we send out. I can't control how anyone else reacts, but I can control how I communicate with my customers. And so if I show them respect, then they should give me respect in return. By the way, no employee, no team member should ever have to put up with abuse. I mean, it's not saying that at all. Reciprocal respect also means that if I display that respect, then if you disrespect me, then we don't need to be doing business together. But I think that what happens is, in so many situations that I've seen, there are organizations where senior leadership is not treating their frontline team workers with respect, and then they can't understand why they aren't treating customers with respect. If we're not treating our teams with respect, we certainly can't expect them to be respectful of and for our customers.
Exactly. It percolates downwards.
Absolutely.
Everything.
Yeah. But you know what? I've seen it go the other direction as well. When people on the front line feel respected, and they feel respected by customers, and they feel respected by their managers, they send that respect back up.
Sure.
And the leadership of the company is admired, and the leadership of the company is respected and cared for. And so you get a culture in an organization that is extraordinary, and therefore becomes very, very difficult for the competition to beat. Because that type of company can hire the best people. People want to work for them. They keep the best people. I think the most underrated expense in any organization is employee turnover. Not just because you have to spend money and train somebody else, but if the employee picked up a computer and walked out the door, we'd have the police go arrest them for stealing property. But that employee can walk out the door and take with them relationships that are more valuable to the company than the computer. And the company doesn't think anything about that. They should be working. I see these leaders all the time that say people are our greatest asset, and then they treat them like they're an expense. An expense is something that you try to reduce and to manage. An asset is something that you invest in and grow and try to cultivate. So if people truly are your greatest asset, then it really is about that reciprocal respect that can make such a significant difference for any organization.
It's beautiful how you combined this exchange of respect and brought it into the culture of the organization.
Thank you. It's all part of the same, right? It's all there in the same mix.
Exactly. I mean, it's all together. It comes together. Thank you so much, Scott, for being with us. It was really, really a fascinating experience to be having this iconic conversation with you.
Well, it's been my thrill and my privilege, so I really appreciate it. I hope we have a chance to talk again in the near future. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to CXO with your host, Supriya. I hope you enjoyed a dive into the nitty-gritty of customer experience. If you are committed to applying these ideas in the real world, stay tuned with me. Don't forget to check out all the links and resources in the show notes. That's all for this episode, folks. See you next time.